want to thank everybody for coming. And this is a very serious event for the state of California. As we now are grappling with our budget and the issue of how we raise capital, clearly one of the things that becomes the most effective way is to increase jobs in the state and protect the jobs that we have. We're here today as the legislature to say that we're concerned about one automobile manufacturing plant in the state of California. It happens to be the last automobile manufacturing plant in a state that per capita uses more cars than any other state. It's the NUMMI plant in Fremont, and I know someone might say, well, it's Tirico's district and it's Corbett's district, so why are you bringing it up? Because the antennas from that plant are made in Compton, in my district. In fact, there are some 1,000 suppliers who make the various parts of the car in California. So there are 5,000 jobs at the NUMMI plant that pay an average of $65,000 a year. But there are an additional 15,000 jobs across the state that brings the payroll to somewhere north of $700 million. We understand that the governor is trying to negotiate to make this work. Recently, General Motors announced that they were going to discontinue the Pontiac altogether. They make the Pontiac Vibe at that facility. They make the Toyota Corolla at that facility. They make the Toyota Tundra truck, and they make the Tacoma truck, all at that facility. We're looking at a series of options that we'll discuss to try to breathe economic life into the plant and make it competitive. That's our aim. We hope not to upstage or cause anyone any grief or concern. And we're working at this as a collaborative. As I say, I have a concern because we make the antennas. There are parts made in San Diego, there are parts made in Shasta. So this is a statewide effort that happens to be centered in Fremont. Let me recognize the two colleagues of mine who actually represent the physical plant itself in Fremont, California. Please recognize Albert Tirico, who is the assemblyman who represents the plant. I'm sorry, Alberto, excuse me. I got the last part right.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very brief here. As Senator Wright has stated, I know Senator Corbett shares the concerns, as do my assembly members, Mr. Slory and Mr. Gaines. Part of the challenge now in California is we're bleeding jobs. When I grew up, my parents came here as immigrants. There were a lot of blue-collar jobs that allowed people to become middle-class families. Those jobs are gone. This is the only car factory west of the Mississippi in the entire country. As Senator Wright said, several thousand jobs, 4,500 to 5,000 in Fremont. I grew up in Fremont when the original GM plant closed in the 80s. And I saw firsthand the devastation that impact had on families, working families all over the district, and the devastation that it had on those families when you lose your principal income earner. So now we are facing the possibility again, the very distinct possibility. So we have come together here in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion to craft legislation to encourage NUMMI to stay open, to encourage Toyota to stay in California. There are great challenges for doing business in California. We're only one of 3 states that charges a sales tax on the purchase of manufacturing equipment. I have run a bill on that issue. In my first 2 years, I ran the bill because it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to charge a sales tax on the equipment and also to charge a sales tax on the final product, cars in this case. We have lost many manufacturing opportunities when it comes to high tech for the same reason. So it's time for us to take a different approach. It's time for us to create jobs in California, retain jobs. So I've introduced ABX 431 in the 4th extraordinary special session dealing with our budget and the economy that will eliminate the sales tax for car manufacturers in California. We'll establish an emergency enterprise zone. I know Senator Wright's bill does the same thing. These bills are not competing with one another. They are working in cooperation with each other to eliminate those problems and those obstacles to manufacturing in California, and also will impact, hopefully next year, will be an incentive to Tesla to build their cars, 100% electric vehicles in Southern California. This is a California bill. It's a California problem. We can no longer afford to lose even a single job here, particularly those that pay well, provide health care benefits, and whose workers, when they are working, they pay income tax, they buy things, we collect the sales tax. And I think most troubling is when people lose their jobs, they lose their homes. And on foreclosed properties, we don't collect a penny for county property taxes. So all of those things are important to our economy. All of those things are important to the Bay Area and California. I'm going to turn it over now to Senator Corbett, who I'm honored to represent the district, share the district with. I'm in the southern part of the district, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank my colleagues for being here this morning, as well as Assemblymember Gaines, Assemblymember Solorio, the Majority Leader Alberto Tirico, and of course Senator Wright, who gave a very passionate speech on the Senate floor this Monday to help move this process along. I'm also here to show my support to my colleagues. As has already been mentioned, this plant is a major economic force in the state of California. 4,000 to 5,000 jobs are there, and there's countless thousands of other jobs that can be hurt if this plant does close. We have suppliers and vendors throughout the state of California who supply this plant, not to mention the energy use of this plant as well, which would impact our energy providers as well. I'm very concerned, as Assemblymember Tirico mentioned, at how this will impact our district in Fremont. Not only does this impact vendors throughout the state, but just the local economy, how this will impact homeowners, how this will impact the grocery stores, the local healthcare providers, and everybody who is involved with this plant. So I share the concern of my colleagues. I will be working and supporting measures that have been introduced already. I've already signed up as co-authors on the measures that have been introduced. But even more importantly, I think we need to move this even more quickly than the legislative process provides. Some of us have already been in contact with the governor's office, and we are asking for his assistance in looking into all of the programs that are already available to assist manufacturers. I'm particularly interested in creating an enterprise zone in Fremont surrounding the plant to assist this plant, allow for various different tax assistance and tax programs, but also perhaps to help us move even some of the other suppliers and vendors that are out of state closer to the Fremont area, which will allow cost savings that can allow this plant to continue to operate and be feasible. So I just pledge my support to work directly with Toyota, to work directly with NUMMI, and also I have reached out to Senator Boxer and Senator Feinstein on meetings that already occurred prior to the announcement of GM pulling out to ask for federal assistance as well. I do believe that we do have an opportunity to save this plant, but it will take a lot of hard work working together to make this happen, and I pledge my support to Toyota to work with them in whatever way we can to continue operating this facility in Fremont. Thank you. And have you been introduced yet? May I introduce Assemblymember Gaines, very interested in this issue. He chairs a select committee on the auto industry, and he has something to share with us as well.
Great. Thank you, Senator Corbett. Just appreciate this opportunity. A couple of months ago, we started up a automotive study group on a bipartisan basis, both in the Senate and the Assembly. Had the opportunity to tour the NUMMI plant last week, and there are 200,000 jobs here in the state of California that are in related industries, whether it's aftermarket parts or actual manufacturing of automobiles at the NUMMI plant. And these are good paying jobs. We don't want to lose these jobs out of the state. We've had too much of that already occur in the past. We really need to take a look on the right way to regulate them and tax them so that they can thrive and we can get that entrepreneurship and that growth occurring back in the state of California again. Right now we've got to stop the bleeding. NUMMI is the #1 priority, and I will do everything I can with my colleagues to try to preserve those jobs. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Assemblymember Jose Solorio. I'm here because I believe that what happens at the NUMMI facility will have a ripple effect throughout the California economy. I'm here as a pro-jobs Democrat. I would share with you that I led a delegation last week to look at the NUMMI facility, and that's when we really learned firsthand what the woes there were. We saw the 5,000 workers that are there day in, day out, making $60,000 a year. They're good jobs, and there are some 20,000 jobs really statewide that are related to that facility. As we're grappling with this budget and deficit after deficit year after year, I think long term the way we're going to deal with our budget situation is by growing our economy. And that means that we need to work strategically to help those vital industries that we have. And one industry that we still have a little bit of is the auto manufacturing facility. We need to do what we can to try to help Toyota stay here in California. We also toured last week Tesla. They have some great vehicles. They have great expansion opportunities here in California. We want to send a message through this legislation authored by Senator Wright and also authored by Assemblymember Tirico, and I'm proud to be co-authoring both those pieces of legislation. We want to send a message through that legislation that we want auto manufacturing jobs in California. We want them to stay and we want them to grow, and I'm proud to be here today with you.
But yeah, that would be our concern. There's always a perception that California as a state is not interested in maintaining manufacturing jobs. In fact, some people say that we're indifferent. So this is actually, again, a voice by the legislature to say that we are concerned about protecting these jobs, particularly in the automobile sector. I grew up in Southern California. I watched the tire industry and the automobile industry in Southern California decimated over a 24-month period, where we lost in excess of 70,000 jobs. And the legislature at that time in the 70s was almost indifferent, because people just said, well, there'll be other jobs that come and something else will replace it. I can tell you from experience that nothing replaced the industrial infrastructure that was the base of Southern California. There were 4 large tire companies. At one point, we made 25% of all the passenger car tires in the United States in Southern California. At one point, we made 1 of every 3 jetliners that flew around the world in Southern California. Now we don't make those anymore. This is the anniversary of the moon launch of Apollo 11. Well, the space shuttle was made in Southern California. We don't make that anymore either. We were the state that essentially got the United States through World War II with a strong manufacturing infrastructure. Most of those plants and facilities are now gone. We no longer make the P-51 Mustang. We no longer make the DC-3. And if we're not careful, we'll be out of the auto business. We can't sustain that, and we'll not be able to grow our budget. So in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion, the legislature is saying that we want to do that, and we want to empower the governor so that as he's having discussions with both Toyota and General Motors, who own NUMMI, as a partnership, we want to encourage General Motors to begin making another car there to replace the Pontiac that's going to leave. We want to make sure that everyone in the world knows that the state of California, the legislature, top to bottom, is concerned about maintaining those jobs. And I guess we'll do questions if you have them, and I thank you all for coming.
Senator, why just this one industry? I mean, if we're talking about the economic benefits of manufacturing, why not a sales tax exemption for all manufacturing equipment in every industry? Why an urgency bill just on this?
And it may be that we get to that, and as a matter of fact, that has been proposed. This becomes an urgency measure because we want to demonstrate concern for this plant. We may well look back at doing a manufacturing tax credit on sales tax, as you suggest. That's not too far in the offing. Just as, for example, one of the things that we're looking at is that NUMMI has to compete with manufacturing facilities across the country that have a lower power bill. We're looking at making an adjustment in the public goods charge in their power bill to, again, provide encouragement. We're not sure yet that all of this will work, so this becomes somewhat of a pilot. And if this works, you might well see us take this show on the road, so to speak, and look at other industries where we may need to do that prop-up. But the immediacy of what could happen at NUMMI and the ripple effect that it poses across the state, because again, they assemble the cars there in Fremont. They weld them there in Fremont. But again, from Compton to San Diego to Shasta, most of the parts that are going into those cars are made in California and other states. So our concern becomes to make sure that we take this as a test case. And it's a case where, again, we're not at odds with the governor. We're not at odds with people at different parts. So you see colleagues from all over the state saying that we want to make sure that this works, because if we can save this one, it's a demonstration that we're prepared to protect some of the others as well. We've still got some burgeoning manufacturing businesses. Boeing just announced today that they're going to have a potential satellite business in El Segundo, California. We want to make sure that they're able to keep doing that. Northrop Grumman still has a facility in Southern California. So we want to make sure that all of that stays, because those are jobs that are very difficult to replace. This becomes hopefully the first of many rescue efforts.
Tell me why it's not hypocritical that you suddenly have this urgency bill just because it's affecting jobs in your district.
It affects jobs across the state. It's not just my district. I make the antennas in my district. There are other districts that make the wheels. There are other districts that make the radios. There are other people who supply the steel. So it's not simply my district. The concern is that, as we look at the dismantling of General Motors is what created the urgency. The Pontiac Vibe is going to be discontinued as an automobile. That happens to represent almost 40% of what was produced at the plant. That created the urgency. It's not as though we were not paying attention. As my colleagues mentioned, we were looking at things to protect NUMMI earlier. No one could foresee that General Motors was going to go bankrupt and that they would simply pull an entire line out, and they're one of the major sponsors and owners of the facility. So that created an urgency that did not exist until they announced just 3 weeks ago that they were going to discontinue the Pontiac Vibe.
How much do you think these benefits would be worth?
Well, it will certainly be worth more than the loss of payroll that will accrue if we don't do it. I mean,
Is there an estimate though?
it's hard to get to, because again, if you said how much does it cost, I could ask the question the other way. It would be how much would it cost not to do it? I mean, if the plant closes, and I don't want to make it an exclusive Toyota issue, but General Motors still has the opportunity to manufacture cars at this plant, and the plant's demonstrated that it's capable of doing that. So we're going to have to put something in order to keep something. So and let me say it another way. If the plant closed tomorrow, for example, they have a $2 million per month electric bill. If the plant closed, you'd have to recycle all of that cost to the ratepayers in the PG&E territory, because all the power has been paid for. So if we simply let it close, that's not free either, because in addition to losing all the revenue that went with that, everybody's electric will be higher, the property tax. I'll try to quantify what it is, but again, we were looking at, and we'll have that in analysis shortly, but again, the cost of doing nothing is much greater than what we're proposing. Okay. The loss would certainly be in the tens of millions of dollars. The economic benefit to the state of just the 5,000 NUMMI employees was estimated at $40 million, just from the people who work there in Fremont.
So the cost of the
Overall, it would not be $40 million at all.
They use the credits.
Yeah, and then the other side is that depending on how they use the credits, as Senator Corbett just pointed out, there could be advantages that weren't referenced, because that becomes other economic advantage that also can accrue to the state.
Are you hoping to do this during this session?
We're trying to do it. It won't be in the next 2 or 3 days, but it'll certainly be before this session ends in August.
Well, could a decision by Toyota be made before the piece of legislation is through?
That's why it's an urgency. We're in a race to make sure, and our concern becomes,
That you're getting from the negotiations.
well,
Oops, we don't have anything specific. Obviously, they're looking into this. It's brand new news, obviously, that GM has decided to pull out of the NUMMI partnership. So we are, as Senator Wright has mentioned, we're in a race against the clock, just to show that we will do whatever we can as a legislature, and also in working with the governor, to try to convince them that this is a feasible plant and that it should stay open. So we don't know a timeline, but we're doing whatever we can to try to forestall that, the closure.
Any of you guys take campaign contributions from the United Auto Workers?
Actually, I tried to. They didn't have any money last year.
Before last year?
Oh, but I have in the past, yes. I mean, that was like 10, 12 years ago. And for full disclosure, I called them and there wasn't much to get this time, so, you know, but again, I think that, you know, if you look at that plant, there's auto workers, there's Teamsters, there are a number of good labor jobs that are a part of that plant, so, yeah, I did try though, yeah.
Can I comment just from my perspective? I don't have any of these facilities even in my district. There is so much value of keeping good jobs here in the state of California that, and I think this can serve as a great model, as Senator Wright had said, in terms of, you know, let's figure out how we can save this facility, and then maybe we can broaden that statewide to provide relief to other manufacturers and hopefully draw new ones back to the state. So, thank you.
Any idea how many jobs will be lost if GM does pull out?
Well, again, to make clear, the NUMMI facility is actually a partnership, and it's a separate entity from Toyota and GM specifically. But in the state, there's some 20,000 jobs that are associated with the plant that would all go away. There are 5,000 immediate assembly line and plant jobs that would go away immediately. And the other thing, the other plants are not 100% based on NUMMI. The antenna factory in my district also makes antennas for aftermarket and other things, but their principal supplier or purchaser is NUMMI.
What I was wondering was if GM pulls out this and Toyota stays in, do they retain a certain amount of jobs, or is the whole thing collapsed?
Well, it's interesting. If you'd seen the plant, if you ever have an opportunity to go, like they make the Corolla and the Pontiac Vibe on the same line, and they're able to produce some 500 or 600 cars a day. So what you'd have is you'd have a reduction, obviously, in terms of the output, or Toyota could decide to ramp up the output of the Corolla that's made on the same line. But if you see the cars made, what you'll find is that literally the design system of the plant, which is itself ingenious, is that they might make 6 Vibes, and then they might make 4 Corollas, and they literally travel down the same line, and the worker who's working in the assembly line actually grabs the correct part to assemble it on the car as it moves down the line. It is a very technologically sound plant in terms of it being designed to manufacture multiple types of cars on the same line. So it is a state-of-the-art automobile factory. So if the volume goes down, they may have to adjust a shift. But if we're able to keep the plant open, you'll be able to maintain the vast majority of the jobs. Okay.
All right.
Thank you all so
Thank you all
much.
very much.